Why can Penn State beat Oregon this Saturday in the whiteout? Well, Penn State is a 3.5 point favorite, and I'm convinced they're going to win and cover. So I am going to give you 15 reasons why Penn State should beat Oregon this Saturday. I'm also going to be giving an Oregon perspective to this, even though I'm picking Penn State. And when that is released, in a reply to the pinned comment, you won't just see my Oregon versus Penn State preview and prediction video. Highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. You will also see the 10 reasons why Oregon should win video down there. Check those out, and before we begin and I give you these 15 reasons, please like the video and watch it all the way through. That way you can get my full perspective, the 15 reasons, and boost our presence in the algorithm. Make sure to comment your thoughts down below. Give me any positive or negative feedback. You can call me a genius, a moron, something in between, neither. Just comment your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. And make sure to hit the notification bell for the channel and also for the Oregon and Penn State football playlists linked to the video. That way you can get notified when I release more videos about these teams, whether for this matchup, more previews and analysis on it, which are coming, my reaction to it, and when I cover these teams later in the year and in the college football playoff, because I think these teams are practically locks to get to the playoff as is. But let's start with reason number 1. We'll close out with reason number 15. Number 1 is that Penn State has the superior lines of scrimmage. They have a stronger offensive line and a stronger defensive line. They're more veteran in both positions. Penn State returned Drew Shelton, Olivega Ione, Nick Dawkins, Nolan Rucci, Anthony Dunco from last year's offensive line, all of whom started in multiple games at one point. Shelton, Ione, and Dawkins started for the entire season. Dunco started for most of the regular season before getting hurt. Rucci replaced him, and now they're starting together with Dunco moved over to guard and Rucci retaining that tackle spot that he got last year after Dunco's tragic injury. It's good to see Dunco back and healthy. For Oregon returns center Iapani Lololu. Dave Uli played and started some last year. They got 3 other offensive linemen in the portal, Emmanuel Pregnon, left guard, and then 2 tackles, Isaiah World and Alex Harkey, losing a Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly Jr. to the NFL draft and having bigger and brighter futures there. As for the defensive line, Penn State returns starters Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, some rotational players such as Alonzo Ford Jr. and Ty Blanding, and they got Zariah Fisher back from injury. Chaz Coleman's also emerged as a very talented true freshman edge defensive end. Oregon returns edges, DNs, Mateo Uyunglele and Tatum Tuioti, but their interior, Teone Great played a little bit last year, not that much. He redshirted. Amari Washington is really the only somewhat key contributor from Oregon's interior D-line last year. They got Bear Alexander in the portal, but he hasn't played all that much this year, and when he has not looked incredibly impressive. Oregon, I would argue, has great trench play. It could even be near elite. Maybe at some point it will be elite, or maybe it is already. But I just think Penn State's is better. They have a plus 8.4% havoc rate margin. What that means is that Oregon, when you look at their havoc rate allowed on offense and havoc rate forced on defense, they do a better job, especially on defense, at generating havoc plays. So tackles for loss, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, passes defended, and their offensive line and offense actually allows slightly less havoc plays than Oregon's does. You look at the PFF grades on the lines of scrimmage, and I'll go into this in more detail for the specific players in future videos, so you better hit that notification bell when I won't just go through the trench grades, but other specific grades too. Penn State's offensive line is a 74.4 PFF grade. Their D-line is a 78.1, averaged out per snap. Oregon has a 69.7 O-line grade and a 70.3 D-line grade per PFF. Now, PFF grades aren't perfect, but since both have played pretty soft schedules, not really much of anyone, I think you can say compare these PFF grades better than, say, if you had to compare Florida's PFF grades or Texas A&M's or Notre Dame's, teams who have played someone or a collection of someone's, to, let's say, Penn State or Oregon's comparing a team that has faced a tough schedule to someone who has not. But both these teams haven't really played anyone yet, so I think it's appropriate here. And I want to spend more time on this reason than other reasons because I think this opens up so many other pathways for why Penn State should win this game. When you are better on the offensive line and the defensive line, and you're more experienced there, and as we'll get into later, you're at home in a special environment with some of the travel things that Oregon will have to deal with, that is a huge, huge advantage. And again, I will circle back to last year's Big Ten championship game. We'll get into that a little bit later. Oregon won that game because of their air attack, because Gabriel was better than Allar, and especially he had better receivers. And I also think in that game, Tom Allen was exposed a little bit, and Oregon may have had the better coordinator duo in hindsight. Penn State won the trenches and dominated the trenches in that matchup. Let's move on to reason number 2. Jim Knowles. The man, the myth, the legend. He's the best defensive coordinator in all of college football. He has led defenses at Oklahoma State and Ohio State to top 10 finishes in points per play allowed. 10th with 2021 Oklahoma State, 2nd with 2023 Ohio State, 1st with 2024 Ohio State, and Penn State currently sits at 1st in that category. Again, hasn't played anyone, that's why I didn't lead with that, but currently they only allow 0.085 points per play. Don't think they will allow that few points per play to this Oregon offense, but Jim Knowles is inheriting a better situation here at Penn State and a better roster, much more so than he did at Ohio State in 2022 or any of the Oklahoma State or Duke defenses that he took over. This is a talented, disciplined unit that only, quote, suffered for a year under Tom Allen, who, in hindsight, especially with his Clemson performance, I do not think is a very good, if at all, good defensive coordinator. Could even be bad. But that was only for a year, and Penn State's defense last year was still pretty good. It just wasn't near elite or elite. It was kind of teetering on that near elite edge right there. This Penn State unit, they get in the backfield. They do a good job of getting TFLs, sacks. They have not allowed a touchdown before inside the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter. So that's something to keep in mind. Jim Knowles, I also think, is the best coordinator on the field in this game, or best coordinator in the game. He's technically in the box, so not on the field. Number 3 is the 2024 matchup theory. What I mean by this is I see a lot of people picking Oregon here. A lot. And that's another reason we'll get to much later in this segment is, the public, and when the public's picking a team and their opponent's favored and the team they're picking's on the road. Anyway, you can get where I'm going there. Where has Oregon improved to further take advantage of the passing attack than they did last year? And where have they improved to do a better job of shutting down this Penn State rushing offense and doing a better job of exposing Penn State's defensive front? Where have they improved in any of those angles? I want anyone who disagrees with me in particular to answer down below. Anyone. Are Oregon's offensive tackles better than last year's? Do we know that Dante Moore factually right now and in this game will be better than Dillon Gabriel? Do we know that Penn State's rushing defense is the same as it was last year? Because I would think, based on returning production and preseason research and what I've seen so far, that it's probably better. Is Oregon's run defense better? They had a pretty big drop-off in terms of NFL talent at defensive tackle, while Oregon returns their defensive ends, but Penn State returns their entire offensive line, both running backs. Allar's only had one designed run, and against Oregon, he had 54 rushing yards, and he slimmed down over the preseason, and him and the staff made that a point of emphasis to have him be used more in the rushing attack because they don't have Bo Pribula anymore. And Kotelnicki likes to run the quarterback, both from last year with the Pribula package and at Kansas when he was previously the offensive coordinator. Has Penn State's secondary gotten better? We'll see. But has Oregon's gotten better? Again, we'll see. And in theory, Penn State has much better receivers than they did last year, and I think in practice they do. So how has the prior matchup that we saw in 2024, where it was a very close back and forth game, how has that matchup not gone more in Penn State's favor? How has it gone more in Oregon's favor? Because if Oregon is going to win, the matchup probably has to go more in their favor than it did last year. I don't think preseason research or even the on-field performance really says that right now, that it goes more in Oregon's favor than it did last year. Reason number 4, Penn State has the superior staff. Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles are the best coordinator duo in college football. Even if you disagree with me on that, Jim Knowles is the best coordinator on the field in this game. If you think it's Will Stein, then I will just tell you from a head-to-head perspective, Stein got Knowles once, and then the time Knowles got Stein in the postseason, Knowles got him harder than Stein got him in the regular season. Just saying. And Tosh Lupoi in big games, not going to count 2022, but 2023 Washington, both times, last year's Ohio State at home, wide receiverless Penn State in the Big Ten title game, and the Rose Bowl. It's 5 games right there. All the time has given up more than 30 points. Even with talented players, NFL players, defenses that rank high in efficiency. He's the worst coordinator on the field. He is the worst coordinator in this matchup. So with that, I personally like Penn State's assistant staff a little bit more, but that's up for debate. Head coach, I think, leans Oregon, but there could even be a debate there. I personally would think it strongly leans Oregon, though. Lanning's better than Franklin. But coordinators, the overall staff, I do think leans Penn State here. And that's a big deal, especially with a bye. Number 5, Penn State has a slightly superior roster. I'm hedging a little bit there and saying slightly, because Oregon has looked better through their first 4 games than Penn State has through their first 3. But part of that may be style, and part of that may also be how they're treating those first few games. Penn State is older, they're more veteran, and I think with the better coordinators and personally slightly better assistants, I think they've been better developed and coached. That matters here. And it's not just a thing where, you know, they're superior dramatically in some positions, but Oregon is superior on one side of the ball. Just since Penn State is, say, drastically superior at D-line and O-line, but Oregon's superior to everything else, that Penn State's trenches triumph the other areas Oregon's better in. No. Penn State doesn't have this extreme edge in the trenches. I think it's a big edge, but it's not, say, what Penn State versus Michigan State's edge in the trenches would be for Penn State. Not even close to that. There is a world where Penn State has a battle in the trenches and Oregon maybe even wins there. What I'm talking about is the idea that Penn State, when you look at preseason research, when you look at PFF grades, when you look a little bit at production, there is an argument to say that they're not just better at staff and defensive coordinator, but their running backs are better. Their slot wide receiver is better. So for Oregon, you're looking at Gary Bryant Jr., wide receiver Y, comparing him to Trevor Pena. I would take Trevor Pena athletically and production-wise over Gary Bryant Jr. any day. In the same way that I would take DeCorian Moore, their wide receiver Z, over either Liam Clifford or Devontae Ross. DeCorian Moore's wide receiver 1 in this game. But I think wide receiver 2, 3, and 4 would all be Penn State here, based on production, based on history, based on preseason research, and even things that have happened so far this year. You can't take too much from this year, let's be honest, because we're only 3 games in for Penn State, 4 games in for Oregon, and they're playing bad teams. So you can take some things away from it, but let's not get too carried away with ourselves here. Penn State's better on the offensive line. The defensive line, we've already talked about that. There's an argument, I think a strong one, for them to be better at linebacker with Roas and Amari Campbell and Dominic DeLuca. The fact they have, 3 serviceable good linebackers there. Oregon does too. I'd lean with Penn State based on their experience there, although it's pretty close. Oregon has Bryce Betcher. Jerry Mixon's looked pretty good. I think they're better at strong safety with Saki Wheatley, but Thieneman at free safety, Oregon has that, and Penn State is higher in special teams efficiency. You can also make the argument they have the better OC. You could say they have the better quarterback, though data wouldn't back that up right now. Could also have a better wide receiver X. That would be comparing Kyron Hudson to Malik Benson. I would go with Hudson there over Benson, but Benson's looked good through 4 games, so that's a maybe. Tight end, I think Oregon is tight end 1, but Penn State could be deeper there. And for nickel, you're comparing Canady from Oregon with Tracy from Penn State. I think there could be a debate there. I think that Penn State does have the superior roster. Is it by this massive margin where Penn State should be favored by 14, 17 points neutral field? No. That's not what I'm saying. But I do believe their roster is, on an overall basis, slightly better or better at the majority of positions. Oregon has some positions where they are superior, but it's not to the same degree or same quantity of positions that Penn State has over the Ducks. Number 6 is an explosive backfield. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Singleton hasn't had a hot start, but Katron Allen has. Preseason, this was in the conversation with Notre Dame to have the best running back duo. Right now, solely based on the here and now, I'd go with Notre Dame. We'll see what Penn State can do in this game, though. Last year, they gashed that Oregon defensive front, and they've gotten better. Same with Penn State's offensive line and rushing attack every week so far this year. Reason number 7 is Knowles versus Dante Moore. So you're talking about the nation's best defensive coordinator going up against a quarterback who is inexperienced. He's only making his 5th start with Oregon, and I know 5 starts, not start number 1, but it's start number 1 on the road with Oregon in a top 5 matchup. That's huge. It, I think, is a Walmart Temu version. It is a smaller scale version of Bryce Underwood going on the road and facing Brent Venables. That highly favors Penn State here. Number 8 is Penn State's pass rush. So they're front 6, front 7, because they can operate out of a multiple look. They've showcased some 4-3 stuff. They have the starting 3 caliber players there at linebacker in DeLuca, Campbell, and Rojas. They're athletic as hell, man. And they have a havoc percentage of 19.9%, which means for every one out of their opponent's 5 plays, Penn State's defense forces a TFL, a sack, a turnover of some type, a pass defended, basically a play that doesn't go for any positive yards or forces their opponent back. It's an aggressive unit, and it's an effective athletic unit. That's especially the case with their defensive front and pass rush. Penn State right now, despite playing in 1 fewer games than Oregon, they have 9 sacks, Penn State does, and 34 TFLs. Oregon's defense is 22 TFLs and 7 sacks in an additional game. And I don't think that's a coincidence either when watching these defenses. Penn State's, I would say, is definitely probably more aggressive, but that might be a misconception from my perspective, and it could just as easily be that Penn State's defensive front is just that much better. And I think there is a good chance that's the case. Reason number 9 is they have A.J. Harris, Elliott Washington, Adavion Collins, Saki Wheatley, Zion Tracy. I mean, they have great, talented defensive backs, some of whom, particularly Wheatley and Harris, already have projected NFL draft grades. Harris has been projected to be a first-round corner, and he is still viewed through 4 weeks of college football as one of the best prospects, especially best corner prospects in the upcoming 2026 NFL draft. He was awesome for Penn State last year. I think he's going to be awesome for Penn State still this year. So while Oregon has that vaunted passing offense, DeCorian Moore, Kenyon Sadiq, some other receivers and tight ends that aren't nearly as good as those 2, but are impactful and athletic, I think that Penn State's coverage can handle, I think they can handle these guys. I do, at different times. Not all the time. By handle, I just mean hold their own. I don't mean destroy them. I mean punch back and forth with them and make it a fight, and not just a dominant Oregon passing offense. Reason number 10 is the matching air attack. So Oregon is being talked about in this game as the team with the better QB and the better weapons. And some might even say they have the better secondary, though I haven't really heard that one. That's just not true. There's an argument that Penn State has the better wide receiver core. Well, they do not have wide receiver one or anyone as talented as Dakorien Moore. They have better depth there. Kyron Hudson, Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross. You can name Dakorien Moore for Oregon, who's better than all three, but are you going to take Malik Benson over any of those three? No. Gary Bryant over any of those three? No. Point stands. Penn State is deeper at wide receiver. Oregon is the best player. There's a debate there. Dante Moore statistically has looked far better than Drew Allar so far. However, Allar is more experienced. Allar won't be dealing with the road environment or the nation's number one defensive coordinator. He'll have a tough test on his own against Oregon's defense, but with the environment and circumstances, I don't think it's quite the same thing. And Allar statistically has been better than this several times, including in parts of 2023. So is he really that much worse than Dante Moore? Is he worse at all? Or do people just want him to be? Reason number 11 is that Penn State does have a depth edge. This will matter more in the second half, but it will become evident. You look at reason number 12, I think that Kotelnicki has wrinkles ready for this game that he will throw in. He's definitely saved things. It's not like Penn State is reserving 60% of the playbook for this game. That's impossible. But there might be a formation. There are definitely going to be quarterback-designed runs. Allar's only had one of them so far this year. Got that from Landon Tengwall, who's poured through every Penn State play and Oregon play on his channel. I would expect Penn State to run Allar maybe 5, 6, or even 7 times more than they've ran him through the first 3 games. I mean, there will be wrinkles in the ground game and also in the passing game. And I would even say on defense from Penn State in this matchup. But mostly we're focusing on Kotelnicki there because the offense has been a point of concern for Penn State through 3 games. Number 13 is that the public loves Oregon, and when you press them about why they love Oregon here, they mostly answer with quarterback, receiver, and just basically final score. A lot of it, there's parts of it that are justified, so the efficiency metrics, that's a good justification. But a lot of the other arguments are what I can really account to as box score watching, or only caring about the quarterback. And quarterback is important, but it's not the only position on the field that decides games. We've seen this with, for example, Georgia versus Ohio State, or Michigan versus Ohio State, or Alabama versus Georgia, where the team with the superior quarterback doesn't always win because of other factors. So Carson Beck loses to Jalen Milroe. Stroud never beats Michigan. We even saw it, if you're looking at it from an NFL standpoint, you saw it in last year's Big Ten championship game where Allar probably has a brighter NFL future than Dylan Gabriel does, and they lost. There's other context besides this quarterback looks better and is putting up better numbers and for now looks better on film. There's other things to look at here. And the fact that when you press the public, who's overwhelmingly with Oregon, I'd say the analysts do too, when you press them about it and it feels like they're answering with very basic cliches, it kind of feels like the kiss of death to me. I've talked about that if Oregon comes in here and dominates like some people are picking, they're going to go 16-0 and win it all because of the type of test they're facing, the type of team they're facing. If they kill this Penn State team, no one else is beating them. Even if they just play at their B-tier game, they'll be that much better than the rest of the field if they crush Penn State here, that they'll go to the title and it will be a foregone conclusion after this game. This is their toughest test. So I don't think it is as simple as many are picking it to be. And I just don't like how much the public loves Oregon here. It's actually made me more confident in my Penn State pick. If I'm wrong, I'll eat my words. Even though with how Oregon has played, I have not been as confident about Penn State here as I was in the preseason. 14 is the climate. So Oregon must travel over 2,000 miles and then face the whiteout. That's tough. That can definitely swing the game by more than 3 points, which is usual home field advantage. In fact, I would say this probably swings the game by 5, 6, or 7 points. Those things factored in. Doesn't mean it will, because if Oregon comes in and say the whiteout doesn't faze them at all, which would be very admirable, then it's not that. But you get the point. There's a lot of environmental factors that are going Penn State's way, more so than if they were just playing, say, Indiana on Big Noon kickoff, although Indiana at Penn State might be a night game, or maybe it will be Big Noon kickoff because it's going to be a big game based on how Indiana's performing so far. Reason number 15, last but not least, is Dan Lanning. So Lanning is 1-5 against non-home ranked Power 4 opponents. Should have said ranked top 25 in there, but I'm explaining it to you. So don't anyone come in here and tell me, oh, you missed the top 25 specific. I just told you. It's ranked Power 4 opponents that aren't at home, neutral field or on the road. He is 1-5 against. That is Georgia and Oregon State in 2022, Washington, both times in 2023, and then you also have to consider Ohio State in last year's Rose Bowl. The one win was a one-score win against Penn State last year, neutral field in the Big Ten championship game. So Dan Lanning, I think he's a better head coach than James Franklin, but it's not like this guy is a wizard in big games quite yet. Thank you for watching and listening to this segment. Make sure before you leave to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for my channel and the Oregon and Penn State football team playlists. Have a great day, and I will see you all very soon.